This is my dream come true. It's a TEV talk. So, silver lining, I don't get to see you guys during our time away from school, but I get to talk to you, and you guys are welcome to uh, email me back any questions. So, I wanted to record the Module 55 lecture for you so that we can move on to the next modules and be ready for an assessment when you guys return. So this whole unit is on personality, and this is from my generation, the seven dwarfs, but I want you guys to really think about, in terms of like your terms and usage, what is an enduring or really strong thing about your character, right? So it's a pattern, and you guys are still obviously forming, your brains and growing, but your intelligence is pretty set, and as is some of these traits. So we're going to do personality tests in class. I'll post a couple online for you to do while we're out, but it's a really good unit if you guys open up to it and let down your guard, and it'll help you kind of figure things out. So that's our first kind of definition, is to know what personality is. So this module 55, you guys, is Freud's contribution, right? And he is fascinating in, his contribution, because he really did discover this unconscious source of anxiety. And even in terms of biological things, he had patients, right, that would have paralysis, right, or blindness. And there was no physical cause for those ailments. He realized when he started to talk to them, and through free association, that's the main method, their symptoms went away. So he really is important in looking at the combination, guys, of psych with, medical, with bio. So anyway, his theory, which we've talked about a little bit already, we did the iceberg. I'll show it to you in the next slide, but I want you to know these things for Freud's legacy, right? The unconscious mind, right? And so remember the personality structure. I do want you to know the psychosexual stages and the fixations. And there are 10 defense mechanisms, which we're going to go through today as well. All right, everybody. So like this is interesting down here. This is in Vienna in his office. That's the couch where patients would, lay down, relax, and really just have no filter, right? Kind of tap into their unconscious through what is called free association. So I want you to know that as a method. But I want you to think about the iceberg underneath the surface as this like reservoir, right? This container of things that are just inappropriate, unacceptable, maybe crushes, maybe past, abuse, um, anything that's been, anxiety provoking, you've just kind of buried down there to protect yourself. So it would come out, guys, on this couch. This is a review. Remember, we did this in our sleep unit. So I want you guys to just, again, know the difference between manifest and latent. And this is really good to know because it goes along with Freud's theory that the way to kind of get at, the stuff that's hiding is to look at what was in the dream. And remember, guys, manifest is the story of the dream. So maybe you dreamt about, a dragon, right? And then the latent is the symbolism or the hidden meaning. So maybe that dragon could represent, this rage or this aggression or this repressed love you have for somebody that you're not allowed to be with. Okay, so that's a good review. And some other good things to know for Freud's legacy is his treatment method, guys, became, known as psychoanalysis. So that's how we started the year, right, with psychoanalytic theory. And again, he, was accepted with some of his discoveries because his patients did feel better, right? Symptoms did abate. And so he really came on the scene, guys, in the early 20th century with this huge discovery that there's this unconscious source of anxiety that if it comes up to the surface, then people will be able to lead healthier, more normal lives. So we did this in class. This is just a review, but I want you to know the difference between conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. And think about if I asked you, for example, what you had for breakfast. Maybe you weren't currently thinking about it, but you can kind of access it when I ask you about it. So it's kind of like that right below, you're able to get at it. Please know, guys, that you cannot get at your unconscious mind just by yourself. And remember, what I see during the day, guys, at MHS is your conscious mind. All right, I do want you guys, I put this in to explain the difference between subconscious and unconscious. So guys, the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind, let me just go back, are both found down here under the surface. But I want you guys to think about subconscious as a little easier to access. It's kind of like that vague or familiar feeling you get towards someone, let's say your teacher. And then upon further thought and analysis, you realize that your teacher reminds you of your grandmother. And that explains, the reaction that you've been getting. All right, guys, so the unconscious, think about deep, deep down, right? Way down here is stuff that's been really buried since childhood, right? And so Freud really did stress, guys, that your early childhood is really important, instrumental in forming your personality. So one example could be, let's say you're 5 and your mom made you eat asparagus and you hated it. You gagged on it when you tried to eat it and you threw it up, and then your mom yelled at you and called you disgusting. So that memory would not be accessible, right? It's way down below and you just don't know that it's there. So the key difference, again, is, through working with a trained psychoanalyst, you'd be able to face what has been repressed, what has been buried. You can either do it through dream analysis, hypnosis, or free association. So again, key difference, guys. Subconscious, you can get at easier. Unconscious, very buried. Both, though, under the surface. And you guys, we wrap this up this week with your id, ego, and superego projects. Great posters. But make sure you guys know the key differences or definitions, and also application, right? So if you guys picked characters from your TV shows, they really should represent these 3 parts of the personality. So guys, remember, id is what we're born with. It's instant gratification. It's the pleasure principle. It's all about food, drinking, sex, aggression, doing whatever you want. All right. Now remember, guys, the ego is kind of the mediator. Executive, meaning it manages the id and the superego. It's also, remember, it's the tip. It's what we see in the real world. And guys, if you found good characters for superego, they should be the judgy ones, or always kind of thinking about future goals. They're the conscience. I call it the inner voice, like a moral compass. So that would be the difference between the 3. All right, guys. So psychosexual stages really, again, show this focus on early childhood and, again, these erogenous zones, which are just sensitive areas in the body. And you guys should know that according to Freud, fixations develop later in life if you were overindulged or deprived of those 3 sensitive areas: oral, anal, and phallic. So, this is a good kind of graphic organizer just to make sure you guys know that from babies, right, to about 1.5 years, pleasure center is mouth through sucking, biting, chewing. And again, if you had too much or too little, this would manifest itself later in life. For example, if you know somebody who's always chewing gum or chewing their nails. And then the second one, anal, you guys should look at the age, right? That's the potty training age of 1.5 to 3 years. And so that area of the body is for bowel and bladder. And it is all about control. So think about how 2 and 3-year-olds want to do things themselves. They want to say, they'll say no if a parent tries to get too into their space there. And again, that would be someone if they were given too much or too little control in this time of their life, then later on in life, the fixation would be seen as someone super messy and slobby, or we see especially the control freaks, right? The people who have to have order and neatness. So, and the third one I want to make sure you guys know is the one that's kind of maybe uncomfortable for you, but it is called phallic, which again, Freud focused on the genitals and especially the boy's penis because he saw it as this source of jealousy between the genders. For example, this is, if you guys babysit this age group, it is when they figure out what they have and who has what. And so they do discover that erogenous zone. So it's hard to think about little kids, right, having sexual exploration, but it's part of life. The thing that Freud is hard to kind of reconcile is the incest that he talks about. So I'm just going to move on to this picture. Oedipus is a nice guy, but he has a face only a mother could love. So here's where people do dispute this. A boy's sexual desire for his mother and feelings of jealousy and hatred for the father. So that was seen in the Greek tragedy where Oedipus killed his father and married his mother. So it's just interesting to look at the cultural and the historical, roots of Freud's theories. But you guys should know that the phallic stage is where the Oedipus and the Electra complex are, developing. And also think about it, it's also what gets repressed, right? So you don't have a memory of your phallic stage because you were too young. The last two guys kind of go along with just normal development. So if you think about the ages of, kindergarten, first grade, and, to maybe fourth or fifth grade, you are kind of playing with same-sex friends and you aren't into sexual feelings. But with the onset of hormones, the biological push from your brain, from puberty on, right? So that like 11-ish age for girls and maybe 12, 13 for boys, then the sexual interests begin to come back out, out from under the surface and back to, maturation. All right. I'm going to pause here and let's see if this works. I had a student come see me. Anyway, let's make sure I know where I left off. So Oedipus Electra happens during the phallic stage. And I want to just point out that one of the healthy developmental things that came out was that, we do see children, look at this picture here, they do cope with, their feelings of inadequacy by identifying with their parents. And so you can see how, girls want to be like their mothers, boys want to be like their fathers. So this identification is all about kind of taking on your parents' morals and values and learning how to, listen to your own voice. So I want to get to defense mechanisms and then I'll probably wrap up. So you guys need to understand that this whole theory of our unconscious is that our ego protects itself unconsciously with the following methods. And Freud said that repression, you guys should know from the reading, is the one that underlies all of the ways that we protect our ego. And so it really helps just push down, right, stuff to the underneath the surface, into that big part of the iceberg. So guys, the first one I want you to really know the difference about is regression. And that would be anybody who, resorts to a younger kind of psychosexual stage, such as, let's say you get homesick your first semester in college and you start sucking your thumb, right? So that was a good example of regression. Let me just make this screen a little bigger. And okay, reaction formation is super easy to understand, you guys. Just go back to how you were in middle school. And if you liked somebody, you would not be able to admit it. And you would probably make fun of them, tease them, or be mean to them. So reaction formation is really just going to the opposite. And so we see this in people who are homosexual, right? They manifest that by being homophobic. Anyway, it's fairly common. Projection, you guys, is a way that we disguise, right, our own impulses by attributing them to others.